I'm Adam Niffen.
No, I'm Jeremy Cocaine.
This is Smith Welding Restoration. Nothing to add to that?
Well, it's where we work. It's what we do. We make things great.
All right. There you go. Weld through primer. Weld through primer. My ingenious dumbass, I flipped it over and started spraying the outside perimeter there. I don't know. That was dumb of me. There was no need for it. I've cleaned up here and here. Cleaned up all this. Mind you, that only comes down to about here. I gotta fabricate this part. Let's see if we can get inside. That is where all the seams come together, my lap weld. If you look real close, the ridge on the left is the weld. The ridge on the right that has seam seal up against it is the lap. And it came out very, very clean for what we're doing here. I wanted to get everything seam sealed. I wanted to eliminate what I want to limit the opportunities of water and muck to get in there. And in actuality, when I put this together, when I actually built this part, if you notice along here on the original one, if you know these at all, on the original one, it stands straight up and down, and it's sandwiched right up against the outside wall of the bed, the bedside. I've actually got that canted in. Instead of like this, I've got it canted in about, I don't know, 10 degrees, and that should hopefully not trap as much sludge down in between there. There's so much crap down in there. I thought they had some kind of fiber fill, whatever, to fill that corner out, and it wasn't. It was just sludge. I don't know. Let's take a step back and look at our work. That outer wheelhouse looks as close to factory as I'm going to accomplish. Once I pull all my spot welds, pull my fender lip and weld all the spot welds, I'll tap it around a little bit with a hammer perhaps to give that arch where it's all nice and straight around that arch how it's supposed to be. All that gets covered up with a wheel flare anyhow. That's no reason or excuse to do half-assed or shoddy work. But what I'm saying is what you can't fabricate to perfection, you can tap around and make perfect after it's on. The back half of that wheel arch assembly, it fit almost perfect. I put 2 or 3 relief cuts in it to bring it around easy. The front one fit less precise, but I hammered and dollied it as I went along. I used clamps and vice grips and whatever I needed to pull the old metal to the new metal to spot weld it, and then hammered and dollied it. And through hammer and dolly, I had the dolly inside, and I smashed the seam where it laps together. That's why it's so tight and clean inside the wheel well. And then I just went in there with my ball peen and beat that whole thing all the way around that seam back out. Because with that hammer and dolly, I still managed to push it in maybe 1/8 of an inch. But you hammer all that back out, it gives a nice radius, you're good to go. I'll catch up with you in a little bit. I'm going to get that panel in place, so we're going to go from there. so I stopped short and I cleaned this up real quick. I just want to show you the progress made and where we're at. You know, these are nice and flush right here. Very little body work I'm gonna have to deal with. Need a swipe of short strand. You guys, technically, I know people that leave it like this. Swipe it and move on. Alright, so we got blizzard here in IOA. Wow, what a mess. What we've covered so far. Alright, let me run this down to you. We pulled in this morning, and that steel was still connected, but it was cut loose from the sidewall of the truck. This was, we'll say 8 a.m. when we got it in here. I drilled out some spot welds and I tried peeling that back. Well, the whole outer wheel arch, outer wheelhouse came off. That whole lip and everything came off with it. So I got that back. I got it where it was dried out enough I could do something with it. I prepped the area while the outer wheelhouse was dry. I prepped the area. I marked where the patch panel goes. I cut it about 3/8 of an inch short of that, and I cleaned up the whole outside there about that much, about 3 inches. Okay, that gives me enough where I'm not going to boil paint off and cause other reaction. It'll get it back far enough if I have any other issues I can find them. We cut it back far enough the full extent of the patch, so I knew there was no rust issues there. And we flange that whole area. Now, very important here I want to explain is you flange the area after you clean all your paint and everything off. Otherwise you end up with paint stuck in the one place where your primary weld's going to be, that gutter that's formed where the patch panel lays in that recess, and there's that little itty bitty infinitesimal little gap that you're trying to fill with weld. What happens is you fill that gap with weld and it shrinks that metal right there and it puckers all that in just enough. You can wipe it once and then do one wipe of pick your body filler and you're done. Okay, so then I use the wheel arch, the exterior box side wheel arch for a pattern template, and I took that steel and I tried making it all in one patch. It's just not reasonable to do. It's just not. So I ended up cutting it in half. But anyhow, I got the lip, this lip right here, I actually got via shrinker stretcher. I just got it in the shrinker and I crimped down on that handle. The full depth of it is about 1 inch. And I folded it down over as I brought it around. I brought it to 30 degree maybe. Somewhere between 30 and 50 degrees, and I brought it around multiple times, and it wadded that piece of steel up into it looked like water used chewing gum. I went through it and I stretched it back out, and I was bending it over that radius the whole time to make that lip for your wheel arch, that flange that you spot weld to. That's why I did that. And then I cut it in half, and I just started cutting more and more material off of my original assumed numbers. I made sure I had way more than enough steel than I needed, and I got it where it laid in there reasonably. Tack welded it in place after checking it a couple times with the outer box side skin to make sure the lip flange and everything lined up like it was supposed to. I had the back half made and went at it with the front half, and I was able to pretty much mirror that because that arch is pretty much symmetrical. So if you can split it up the middle and do a left, you do the right in almost the same fashion but mirrored, okay? From there we got that all welded in. I cleaned up all the rusty metal on the interior of that panel and 415'd it. Went underneath, I seam sealed where my lap welds were from where I welded onto the existing steel of the outer wheelhouse, I seam sealed all that. I hammered and dollied the whole thing as I went along. And then I went along with, actually I've been using my ball peen more for body work in this context than anything. If I want to straighten a panel, I use a nice face body hammer. But I'm not straightening a panel, I'm trying to close up gaps and get rid of air gaps for welding. So I got everything nice and tight and crisp. Seam sealed that, got it fitted, got the holes punched around the lip, the wheel arch flange. Prepped everything with a zinc primer, the weld through primer, which I hate, but it's got a necessity. What happens is, in theory, from my education, it doesn't burn off. It just kind of melts into a goop, and then it reconstitutes around your welds, forming a barrier there so it can't deteriorate quite as badly as it had prior. We'll see. Patch panels are just that. Some people glue them in. This isn't an old enough truck or a new enough truck to have to worry about boron steel. Then at that point, I got the box skin sunk on there with some sheet metal screws I use. I could have used Clecos. I didn't. I opted not to use them this time. And I got it on there with like 3 or 4 of them. And I went through, once I got my fit good, I went through and put more in, and I spot welded at those points. Pulled all the screws out, then I went in between those points, spot welded again. And I worked my way around the arch, and then I came back and worked my way around the arch, and I go, if I've got a spot weld here and here, I'm gonna put one here. And I've been working my way around the arch, and now the biggest gap I have is maybe 3/4 of an inch between individual spots. At this point, we'll finish filling in the gaps. I cleaned up the weld. Here it is. It's about 5 o'clock here right now. So you can see it took a day to do this one side repair. If I were to continue on through till body work was done on this, I've got one more small little piece to patch in on the bottom over here. And I got some body work to do right at that body line right here, because this is a little bit low. So I'll have to do some creative body work there and get that filed in there just right. That little tiny piece is probably going to take me damn near as long as 1/2 of that wheel arch. So we're sitting at 8-hour day. I got this far. I didn't really fuck around a whole lot. I just got to my job. You want to know why this costs upwards to $1,000 a side? This is why, folks. Right now, you stitch in, you connect the dots, you just keep stitching. Don't weld continuous, you'll warp it. So the more, as the gaps between them get smaller, I actually skip. I try not to go any more than 3 inches between individual spots. It's kind of important. That'll reduce my warping to a minimum. I should have very little warping to worry about. Now, a side note, my welder settings are actually set right about 14 gauge sheet metal. It's set super hot, burning through the weld through primer. I actually 1/1000 stop welding. 1/1000 stop welding. I try to stay consistent with how much time, the angle, the direction, everything else with my spot welds. That'll bring you consistency in your final product. The more things you can reduce to just a simple robotic movement, mathematical estimation, the better off you'll be. So that's where I'm at. Tomorrow's another day. I hope to have this side completely buttoned up by, say, 10 o'clock, down to the final wipe of body work, and then I can move to the other side. The other side will take me less time because, quite frankly, I've never actually successfully built a wheel arch before. I watch, listen, and learn a lot from you guys, from other folks, Laze. and I picked up some shit along the way that helped me on this journey. Still need to clamp the wheel flange in and spot weld those little rosettes, and we're in pretty good shape from there. So until the next one, you folks take care. I'll come back and show you a little more later. Wow, made it in a video. Thanks for checking in. Come back on the next one. See what the hell we're doing next time. Subscribe, comment. Find us on over on the old Facebook, Smith Welding Restoration LLC on Facebook. Numbers at the beginning. Have any questions? Call.